Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this version or episode, if I could call it that, of the Group Fitness Report. I'm here, as we've shared, with Shay Kostabi. We're about to talk about uh, all things related to reviews, related to talking to your instructors about how they're teaching, what they're teaching,
Mm.
giving them feedback, and doing it in a way, as we've talked about on her podcast before, that is beneficial for them, beneficial for you and the entire department, and also kind of sinks in with them. It comes from a place of compassion, but also really works because we may have been there where we're reviewing instructors and giving them feedback, and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, or they may hear only the good things, and we really want them to hear those constructive things as well. So I have a few questions to ask her, but to meet Shay really quick, if you've never listened to the Fitness Career Mastery podcast, it's incredible. She speaks to not only group fitness managers and fitness managers, but also the coaching that helps inspire instructors and personal trainers. So really fit pros of all kinds. And she's also a boutique fitness consultant. So check out the podcast, connect with her, learn from her in all ways possible. So it's a really, really great resource. And I've been watching and listening for a long time. So I really appreciate Shay for being here on this channel so that we can talk about, again, reviewing instructors. So my first question for Shay is, what are 2 to 3 of the most important things to look for when you're actually in a class watching an instructor teach?
Okay, this is going to be a big one. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be here today. And this is a topic that I could honestly talk about for hours. I've been reviewing instructors internationally for something like 8 years, thousands in multiple languages, in all kinds of modalities. It is my favorite thing to do. I did a lot of it during the pandemic virtually, which was also fun. So I've seen everything and I've experienced everything with everything you said, from like not hearing the critique or not taking the advice, or sometimes not delivering it in a way, in like the most effective way, and it ruffles some feathers, or, whatever. So I've seen it all, and I'm so excited to be here because I really want to help people do this well, because it really does make a difference in your business. So obviously we know that there are like so many facets to a group fitness experience. And so many things to look for, and the instructor is responsible for so many things and wearing so many hats. I really like to break everything down into 2 buckets. So one is like the safety and effectiveness of the class experience, and bucket 2 is the entertainment factor and emotional journey. And obviously there's so many things in there, but when I separate those, it makes it easy to decide. One of the tips that you gave on our podcast is like 2 to 3 things. So I can really pick out the most important from each. And you can also think of this as like hard skills and soft skills, or technical skills and soft skills. So like when I talk about safety and effectiveness, there's the obvious things of adherence to the program and the class structure, whether it's pre-programmed or freestyle, right? Like, is there an arc to the class that makes sense? Proper use of equipment, the room is free of debris and distraction. But the number one thing that I look for in this bucket really is, does the challenge presented to the participants match their skill level? So in sports, this is called the CS level, and it is really important to creating environment for flow to happen, and flow state, which is also like being in the zone. When your clients are in flow, it means that they're performing the activity like fully immersed, with a feeling of like energized focus and full involvement and enjoyment, despite how challenging it is. So I look at everything the instructor is doing, but I also really look at the participants, and that's the number one thing in terms of that safety and effectiveness piece. Like, is what you're presenting appropriate for the people in the room, and is it scalable? And then not only that, but emotional and sort of not just physical safety, but emotional and mental safety. So are the words that we're using to coach inclusive, right? Are they free from shame and judgment and exclusivity, only speaking to one group of people or type of person? Are their cues simple and direct and easy to follow? And is the motivation that they're using really positive and uplifting? So not coaching to the negative. So there's obviously so many things, but like, just, is it a safe and effective environment to challenge yourself in, right? And then the other piece is the entertainment factor and the emotional journey, which is really what makes the class come to life. And this is the part that I think is so difficult for most people. And I'm gonna dive into this on your next question, but really it's like, are they creating a fun and enjoyable experience for everybody? And you can see how like they kind of come together. Again, is it inclusive? Does the instructor appear to be connected with the participants, with the words that they're speaking? And how do they do that? Like, how are they engaging with the clients? What's their body language like? What are their visual cues like? This also includes the musical journey, right? Is the music appropriate for class? Are there shades of color and nuance, basically highs and lows to the workout? It's not just like one note. So when I watch the whole class, is it clear that we've gone on a little bit of a journey? It's not just the same thing over and over. And really all of this boils down to that instructor persona and presence. So those are the two main buckets. And then when choosing or when doing the actual, so I'm taking notes, when I'm actually giving the feedback, I choose one or two from each and then save the rest for later.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I love that you mentioned like taking notes. I think it can be intimidating. That's why you should take the class. Don't like stand in the back with a notebook, but take the class. And then I would do that. I would sometimes write things down, but it could be that template. That'd be so awesome as a group fitness manager, if you're not doing this as often, maybe to start, you have those two columns.
I have a template. You have to have a template. And so
awesome.
the first section, it's like a block, and I list all of the technical things. So, the programming, music volume, right? Like that plays into safety too. Like we're not blowing people's ears out, but also it's loud enough to add energy. So all of the technical things, the coaching, the cueing. And then the second is like, I think I call it like the star factor, right? And I have a rating scale, and then I have a note section. And I like to do both. I like to go in and take the class and kind of just feel it and remember what I can. And then I often, at least once a year, will tell them, I'm going to go and sit in the back and I'm going to write down some notes. Because we miss things when we're in the middle of the workout, especially if it's really good. So
yes. And if you don't have notes, you after class will be like, it'll be a general thought. You'll be like, okay, I liked that class, but then you won't really know how to articulate it to someone.
Yeah, it's just more efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so helpful. So that is my next question is, what are the best questions to ask an instructor after class to kind of start the conversation?
Yeah. So I always begin with a self-assessment. I think you like to do this too. And some of the easiest questions to ask are, how do you feel? Or how did that feel for you? How do you feel class went for the clients? So anything that's like, how do you feel about how it went? And then more specifically, what do you believe you did really well or do really well? Because sometimes they're under pressure and they're not performing their best. So if you can say, what do you believe you really excel at? And then what do you believe needs more improvement? And then I like to ask, before I give any feedback, how can I support you in that? And I let them ask questions. And particularly with new instructors, they will come right out and say, they're like, oh my gosh, thank you for asking that. Actually, during this part of the workout, I run into this problem all the time, or when clients do this, I don't really know what to say or do. And then you can just fix that for them without critiquing them. You're just helping them out. And then when you get into the critique, so I always lead with the self-assessment, and then it gives me a clear picture of where they're at. Some people are very self-aware and others are totally clueless and like disconnected from the experience. So then I know kind of how to approach the feedback. So the next really, really important piece is that you're specific, right? Like, so moving away from those generalizations, like you said, like, oh, that class is great, but why? So both with praise and with the critique and the feedback. So for example, I hear this all the time, like, you have really great energy. but like, what does that mean really?
Yeah,
So can you
that's
be
so
more
good.
specific? I love how much presence you bring into the room. You feel really grounded and embodied and like comfortable in your body. And I think that really helps you build trust with your clients because they feel grounded and safe and comfortable in their body. Or like, I love your body language and your visual cues. You just really fill up the space, or your smile is infectious. Like, be really specific. On the flip side, if they're lacking energy, and this breaks my heart when I see this in a room when, you know, somebody's barking, more energy, most instructors will just interpret that as louder, and shouting
Yes.
is like a major no, like no shouting
Yes.
ever.
Yes. Or shouting the entire time.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you get that like crazy frenetic, like out of control
Hmm.
energy where they're bouncing off the walls, and you and the clients are kind of concerned for their like overall
Yeah.
well-being. And like, you never want to be concerned about your instructor, like too much caffeine, or are they going to hurt themselves? Like, right?
Hmm.
And some people genuinely feel like they're coming in at full
Hmm.
energy and it's just not translating. So it, you know, be specific. Is it the vocal energy? Is it their body
Hmm.
language and their physical presence? Is it the music? Is it the way that they
Hmm.
demo the exercises? So,
Yes.
so on the, when you give them the praise and they're specific, then they know they can become aware of that. Maybe they don't even know that that's something they do really well, and lean on that. And then when they do go to make changes on their own, they know that that's not something that they should touch, right? Like, that we want to strengthen that. And then they become aware of the specifics. And then this leads into your last question, actually, about resources. Instead of just saying like, you know, your vocal energy is really low, be specific. You know, it's you're not speaking on breath, and you're not enunciating very well, so I can't really hear you over the music at times, and I don't want you to shout. And then provide a resource like, hey, I heard this, I have this really great podcast or this book that you can listen to, or I think you should enroll, you know, if you, and that's like a whole other topic, but like whether you can provide a training for them or point them in the right direction, or even just give them some exercises to help them improve.
That really puts a bow in all of it, because I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we've tackled now like what you're seeing and how to be organized as
Yeah.
the reviewee,
Yeah.
or the reviewer, and then
Mhm.
that also kind of sets the expectation it could for the reviewee. Like, you're going in, you may even show your team the template, like, these are the things I'm
Yes.
going to be reviewing. And then the second piece is just how you approach the instructor, and it comes from this like helpful place, the way you describe.
Yeah.
It's more of a leadership than a management kind of
Right.
approach to it.
Yeah.
And then last, the resources, which again just
Yeah.
shows your team that you're there to help them. So what resources do you usually recommend to give out
Okay.
to
Every
instructors?
single person in a leadership position should have their own book of resources that they know and love. And before I give any suggestions, please do your best to read the book, listen to the podcast, take that CE course before you
Yeah.
suggest it, so you know exactly. And I know that takes a lot of work, but you know, that's your job, and that's what makes your job so fun. And then just add so much depth to what you bring to the table. But
Mhm.
definitely like list of like, if you have like a list of books, my go-to is like, let's say somebody's really struggling with their instructor persona. I there's a podcast episode on our show, episode 4 with me. It's called The Power of Persona. You could go there. There's a worksheet that comes with it. But there's also a great book called The Alter Ego Effect that really digs into why you need a persona and what it does for you and why it works. And there's exercises in there.
Mhm.
If somebody is struggling with music, maybe they just, you know, don't consider themselves to have great taste, or they feel like, um, you know, it's like such a chore, right, to choose their own
Yeah.
music. Obviously, you could direct them to some music sources. I have
Mhm.
libraries of music for all kinds of things that I share with people.
Mhm.
Um, Again, podcast episodes on how to create playlists. There's a book I love called The Joy of Movement, which is just super inspiring. Continuing education courses. I love ACE in particular. That's like kind of my go-to because they have so much. And that's
Mhm.
where I got my certification. But both formal and informal continuing education, books,
Yes.
podcasts. I've given homework to people. I think we talked about this on our show. Like I told an instructor to go watch a stand-up comedy show once. And I'm like, I
Oh,
want you
that's
to,
brilliant.
right?
Yeah.
I want you to watch this particular
Mhm.
comedian and I want you to take notes. And I gave specific questions and you're going to come back and talk to me about it. And we're going to talk about how we can apply. I'm not asking you to be a comedian. It had more to do with
Yeah.
like the presentation and the way that they
Yep.
spoke and like were embodied.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
the other big piece of advice is don't be afraid to give resources that are
Mhm.
not specific to fitness
Yep.
and the
Kind of
fitness.
unconventional. Yeah.
And somebody just messaged me. She's probably watching this live. She said, Brandy, hi. I just love that I trained her and her team 4 years ago. And
Oh, cool.
I mentioned something about Billie Eilish's Vanity Fair interview
Mhm.
and how when you're self-aware and you're able to look back, on your progress and the work that you've put in, because it was like her second year doing it. And now she's in her
Mhm.
6th year. And she was just like, this
Wow.
reminds me of you every single year about what it means to like evolve and look back on your journey. I was like, I don't remember saying that.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but that stuck with
Awesome.
somebody as like maybe
Mhm.
not helping to sharpen a technical skill, but like a
Mhm.
point of inspiration to like
Yeah.
just continue to grow and learn and be inspired. And that's equally as important as the skill refinement. So also don't get
Mhm.
hung up on like, you need to take this technical thing to get better.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you can
Mhm.
inspire them through another avenue, that leads them
Mhm.
back to the desire to sharpen the skills. Because when you're like, you need to clean
Mhm.
up your queuing, they're like, cool. It's not
Yeah.
fun to do that. It's not fun
Yeah.
to take a
Yeah.
queuing course. And
Mhm.
that feels like a big project because like queuing is like
Mhm.
so important to class.
Mhm.
So if you can find a way to inspire them and like the
Yeah.
way that they queue and why it's important, they'll
Mhm.
usually take the action to sharpen that tool themselves.
Yeah, the why and then the how. You're giving
Yeah.
them the how to do that,
Yes.
giving them courses, giving them, I love the comedian example. That's brilliant because any comedian that they see, there's the art that they have in their pauses, right?
Yeah.
And we don't do that. That's usually a problem in most classes I see when
Yeah.
the instructors just flooding their script that they say, and people kind of tune it out after a while because they aren't
Yeah.
inserting those pauses. So
I
that's
like
awesome.
referencing that or like talk show hosts because they're
Yeah.
not rather than like a singer or the singers are fun too. Um, but like an actor or even another fitness professional because it is an environment where there is a script, they're not winging it. And they do put a
Yep.
lot of planning into that and a lot of practice. And
Mhm.
there's an arc and there's highs and lows, right? And we need that
Mhm.
as we're also public speakers and that's part of our persona. And like you don't have to be
Mhm.
funny, but
Mm-mm.
that's that person,
Mhm.
when Eliza Schlesinger gets on stage, she's playing a heightened version of Elijah
Yep.
Schlesinger. She's not playing a character. So you
Mhm.
get to see that person as they really are at their best.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's what you should be as an instructor, like a heightened version of your truest,
I
most
like that.
authentic, polished self.
I love that.
So I like suggesting that sometimes because you get to see
Mhm.
like, oh, and they're interacting with the audience, there's like no fourth
Mhm.
wall. And like, so we have that too.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's kind of a good resource.
So good. No,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. And it may be unconventional, but it's useful. It's helpful.
Yeah.
Um, I love that. And just knowing that we can give them these resources, we can
Yeah.
be there for them, follow up with them, like we talked about in, I think, the podcast
Yeah.
episode to make sure that it's actually happening, that
Hmm.
changes are being made. So actually, on that note, I didn't have this question prepared, but I did make a point. It depends on how many people you have on your team. But how many times would you say per year is a good review period
I
for
think
instructors?
2 minimum because you need to
Yeah,
have something to compare against, right? We
yeah.
want to make
Hmm.
sure something that the place that I started teaching at did really, really well is
Hmm.
they quantified everything and then they would say,
Hmm.
so, and they looked at, class numbers and retention as well.
Hmm.
So they'd say like, you're at this much capacity. Let's have a goal of getting you to this number by this date.
Yeah.
And here are the things that I think are going to help you get there the quickest. And so I would walk away knowing like, okay, this is my goal. So not only do I want to consistently provide an exceptional experience for my clients, I want to make sure that I'm talking to them, that I'm building relationships, that I'm not subbing out too much, that I'm showing up on time, all of those things. So that all of those things contribute to class numbers and class participation. And then it feels so good when you hit it. And then you have that next meeting and you can reward them. Even if it's just, it doesn't have to be anything huge. It could literally just be like a small gift card or a coffee or a handwritten card that's like, you are doing the thing, like good for you. And we need as instructors,
it's
like,
huge.
because I've been on both sides, like we need that. We put so much
huge
time and energy and heart into what we do. And we want, all of us want to be great. So at minimum twice, I like to, and again, depending on how big your team is and what your responsibilities are, if you can do like 4, you do not need to be reviewing people every week or every month.
No, that could be too much. There's definitely a cap.
I've worked in an environment where there was too much reviewing, like the owner operator was in the studio all day, every day and taking classes and like just could not contain the feedback. And that really damages the team's morale. So there is such a thing as like way too much feedback.
Too much. Oh, totally. So I think, and it's interesting because I think in the form of clubs, they need probably to do this more often. And so if you are seeing a lot of this, the challenge, I know that sometimes as a group fitness manager, we're like, oh, I'll just make it to their class when I can. You kind of have to schedule it. Like look ahead. This is a great time to look at your calendar for 2023. Or whatever the next year might be if people are watching this later, but to think ahead and go, okay, here's the instructors I have now, here's when I'm going to make it happen.
I like to do spring and fall because I feel like those are high seasons in the studio. And then you can use the downtime like in the summer to like provide workshops and training and like refine their skills. And then that's enough time. I always say like, if your class hasn't evolved like every 6 months, like if you don't look back from the class you taught 6 months ago and you're like not a little embarrassed, you're not going fast enough. Right. So then we, as the people who are doing the reviews, can see that like one whole year, it's like, that could be a completely different person. And like what you took notes on last year may not even apply. So
I love it. I love it. Those are all such great points. Like you said, we could talk about this for hours and days, but I know you'll be back on here and I'll do my best to jump on your podcast again, but I know we're going to stay in touch and we'll keep the conversation going. But at this point, anything else you want to share about reviews before we head out?
No, I think the 2 big takeaways from what we talked about are like have a system, get organized. It's going to help everybody. It makes it easy for you. You know what you're looking for before you even step in the room. And it's totally okay to share that with the instructors. I do that. And then be specific, both on the praise and on the critique. And like, those are the 2 big pieces.
Because it'll really it'll actually make it effective when you have those review times. It'll really work. So I love all of your advice. Thank you so much.
And if you need help, reach out. I do this for studios and companies. I train master instructors because there is no formal education to become a master instructor. I work with people one-on-one all the time. So do not hesitate to like shoot me an email, drop by the website, check us out on social. I'll talk to you. I'll help you out. Like I said, like I'm super passionate about this piece. So I'm happy to help.
Exactly. And I'll put all of your contact information and information about Fitness Career Mastery in the show notes.
Cool.
But thank you again so much for coming. If those of you who know that if this is your first time at the Group Fitness Report, appreciate you for being here for the first time. Please subscribe to the channel so that you can get more content. I go live every month with an industry leader, just like Shay. Next month, we have Ingrid Knight-Cohey, who will be speaking to signature formats. So how to create your own signature formats for future classes. So that'll happen in January. It's the first Friday of the month is what we aim for. Varying times, but in the afternoon, usually on on Fridays. So thank you again so much, Shay, for being here,
Thank you for
and we'll
having
connect
me.
everyone with you.